We've all seen keys like this that rub in the back, and sometimes you can sand off a little and make things work, but other times we must do something more drastic. In the past, I've tried steaming the keys and then putting weights on them or clamping them where they would dry straight, but I really haven't had much success with that. Today, we'll look mainly at the back of the key, how to move it from right to left and then up and down because sometimes it will warp that way. This will be part one. In part two, we'll discuss how to fix the twisted keys. From the front, you can see that one key is twisted to the right, another one to the left. But today we'll look at kerfing a key, which is sawing a cut, and then we'll either glue it or we'll wedge it out. Ron Nossaman, one of the best technicians of our time, wrote an article in the Piano Technician's Journal years ago, and he was asked, is kerfing reasonably predictable? Here's what he said. It's more than reasonably predictable. It's very predictable, unlike wetting and clamping, which doesn't appear to be predictable by any description. Rather than return visits to fix it, again, this is a one-shot fix. I've never had a failure or a repeat. I'd prefer a method that doesn't involve chopping up keys, yet still work controllably the first time. Until I discover one, this is how I'll do it. Kerfing is practical, predictable, and dependable, but ugly. I'm going to use this old set of keys that I saved from an old piano, and I'm going to cut them up. So if you're in the class in Anaheim in, I think it's August 2022, you'll see this jig and you'll be able to see how I did it. And I've written on the keys the way I'm going to cut them. The front is tilted to the right or left, and the tail is twisted this way or the other way. And so as I do these, I'm going to put them back in there, and that way in the class, I'll have these all ready for you. Now with each cut, we're going to try to create a hinge, a little area that is thin, but not so thin that it's going to break, but so that we can push it over. You can see how much I'm pushing it over, or that it can be wedged out. So this hinge is the most important part. The tricky part is when you saw it, it's kind of hard to saw that hinge there, and I'm going to show you how to do that. When I have to fix a warped key in someone's house, I have this piece of pin block with a vise on it, and I can clamp it to a table that I usually bring, or if they have something, or I can even take it outside on the sidewalk and just put my knee on it, put the key in there, and just take my saw and saw away. I'm going to show you where I'll cut this, and you can draw it out, but I want about 2 inches or so, and I want this cut to be right there. So the hinge is going to be right here. I want to make sure not cut through that, but on the other side, I'm going to have to cut through. In order to cut this and not touch that, I put my thumbnail right there, and I'm going to come over here, just, like a carpenter would. I'm going to start cutting from this side, cut almost to the edge over here, blow the dust away so we can see. And when I get right about there, I'm going to switch around to the other side. Now I've moved my key just slightly. I tilted it up just so I can be more comfortable, don't have to look over the edge of this. I'm going to start this way, and I'm going to go down. And when I get a little closer, I can go more straight up on it. Support it really well. Now when I get close, I'm going to remove the saw. I'm going to mash it like that. You can see it's not got a good hinge on it yet. It's not bending very well. And this is where you just take your time, put it in, do a little bit more. Look on both sides of it. Let me tighten my vise a little more. And I support it with my hand over here. Go up nice and slow. Don't go all the way through, but if you do, all is not lost. You just have to clamp it. Now that feels pretty good. Notice how I can bend it over. I think I can glue that fine now. I think that's going to stay there. So now let's put it back in and go for key number 2. This one's warped the other way. This one, we're pretending it's tilted the other way, so we're going to go that way, and my hinge is going to be right here. Since the hinge is going to be over here, I have to start this way. Remember, I start almost flat, and I'm kind of following that line, going down, nice and slow, don't cut your finger off. When I get to about here, I start going down a little bit. Now when I get close to the edge here, you see, I'm going to stop and go the other direction, go down. And I'm going to tilt my vise a little bit. A little more. Okay, there it is. To make this cut, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the capstan. So the same thing, I'm going to try not to hit anything important. That's why I took the capstan out of this one. I'm going to start very carefully on my line. When I feel that I've got enough, I can go down a little bit. And unfortunately, this one's going to show on the top. The other ones are not too bad. This one's the one we got to make look good. When you're doing the twisted ones, you go from the bottom. Try not to get it underneath the key top or the key button. There happens to be a lead in the way here, so I'm going over a little bit too. If you put it under the key button, I've popped those off before, but it's so rare that we have to do this. You just fix it, whatever it is, you fix it. I just take a bandsaw and cut up some keys and make them whatever length or whatever thickness I want. Now looking again here, if I want to move it just slightly, of course, you can just glue it and not put a wedge in. If I want to move it over slightly to the other way, you have to have one that's thick enough. I make this out of keys. So here's some that I was just practicing on when I was trying to make this presentation. Some are better than others, but let's just look at them and see how some of them turned out. This one doesn't look too bad. You could probably sand it. I think what I should have done is maybe sand it while it was still a little bit wet, because it has a tendency to put some of the dust in there. And that's not too bad. I could sand a little more. And on top, once again, you see it, but it's no big deal. This one here is ugly. Well, of course, it's just a scrap key. We could sand it. And make it look better. And that's on the bottom, you won't see it, but yeah, we can make it look a little better. And of course the side, that's pretty ugly, but I don't think they're gonna see it on the side anyway. However, you can beautify it, make it vanish a little bit. This is better on this side, but I can still feel where, you might put putty, or what I like to do is just put some wood glue in there. You can see how my dust is filling it up. If I had a little bit of glue in there, you'd almost make it disappear. So just get you some old keys, cut them up, figure out how to do it. That's a real good one there. So just in summary, whatever cut you make, somewhere has to be a hinge where it's thin enough that it can bend. Learn how to cut those, get you a saw, and I've done it in houses without anything, just out on the sidewalk doing it, and I don't recommend that. You saw my vise setup, that works really well, and if you're in the shop, use a nice saw. When you get ready to glue, and I'm just using a Titebond 2, I have some Titebond 3, there's some differences, but this will be just fine for what we need. I'm going to use this piece of veneer to put the glue in. It's going to slop around a little bit. And I check both sides, make sure it's pouring out really well. Then I'll wipe it off. I'm going to push it in all the way to there. And then I'm going to clamp it really tight. So here are the cuts. I'm putting the hinge on this side if I want to move the tail to the right and glue it. If I want to wedge it to the left, that's the same cut. The hinge there, that's for that. This is the opposite way. If I want to glue it and move the tail to the left, I would cut that way. The hinge is here. If I want to move it to the right, wedging it out, that's the cut. Same thing, move to right or left, depends whether you glue it or you wedge it. Now this is the up and down thing. If you want it to move down and glue it, you would cut it this way. If you want to wedge it up, it's the same cut. And there's the hinge on top. And the last one. If you want to move this up and glue it, that's the way to do it. Or if you want to move it down and wedge it, that's the way you would do it. So that's the cut, the hinge is on the bottom. So that's your 4 cuts in this video.